Ladies and gentlemen, college football fans, welcome back to the Big Ten Quick Talk Podcast. If you have not already, subscribe below. Whether you're a first-time listener or you've listened to multiple videos through the past month or so, we welcome you in, welcome you back, and subscribing is the best and most efficient way to support the podcast. Liking the video, subscribing, leaving a comment is 100% the best way to support this channel. Now, on today's video, we will be starting a series which will continue for the next couple videos at least, where we go in depth on one team for the whole video. And today, by popular request, is the Nebraska Cornhuskers deep dive. You can vote on which team you want next in the community page section of the channel. Now let's get started on this Nebraska deep dive. So this video will be divided up into two main sections, looking at the schedule and looking at the roster as a whole. This will be the format for the next coming videos. So strengths and weaknesses for Nebraska. We'll start with the strengths. The defense. The defense was ranked 11th nationally, 13th by some metrics, but you get the picture. They're a top 15 defense last year with largely just Scott Frost players that Matt Rule developed. So, in particular, the strengths this year will be the defensive line and the secondary. The secondary returns a ton of really good players. Players like Malcolm Hartzog, players like Deshaun Singleton, who people forget about because he was injured halfway through the season, but he played exceptionally well in the beginning of the season. Players like Marquez Buford Jr., who came on the scene late last year and the year before when he was very, very good. And injuries have complicated things, but both of these players are fully healthy. On the defensive line, maybe the best unit on this whole team. Guys like Nash Hutmacher, who really came in strong last year. In only 10 games, he had 5 sacks and 41 total tackles as a nose tackle. You see, he's number 0 in the picture on the top left. And this is a guy who, when paired with Ty Robinson, who is the seasoned vet, the 6-year senior, both of these guys at the defensive tackle position are virtually unstoppable when they are both on the field. One of them is in the backfield pretty much all the time. Nash Hutmacher, I believe, was one of the top defensive tackles in quarterback hurries last year. Guys like Jamari Butler are going to be key coming off of the edge. Princewell Umamielen coming off the edge, Riley Van Poppel coming off the edge. Guys, the latter two that I named took red shirts, but in the 4 games that they played, because they did play in all 4, played exceptionally well. I figure back to the Colorado game with Riley Van Poppel, to the Illinois game with Riley Van Poppel as well. Both games he was just exceptional in. The skill positions. When I say skill positions, I look at tight end, I look at wide receiver, and I look at running back. For wide receivers, you're going to have your top 2 wide receivers be transfers in Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair. Jamal Banks, the past 2 years at Wake Forest, was the number 1 wide receiver, over 1,000 yards, over 10 touchdowns on over 100 receptions. This guy is a proven vet who will be in the NFL as long as he has a good season with the Huskers, and he will, because he will be their number 1 wide receiver. And Nebraska has produced some pretty good wide receiver ones from the transfer portal lately, guys like Trey Palmer, Samari Toure, and Isaiah Nair, a 1,000-yard guy from Wyoming who was injured last year at Texas. This is his 3rd team, but he looked very, very good in the spring game. And then you have guys behind him, speedsters like Jalen Lloyd, like Malachi Coleman, like Jaden Doss, who will be exceptional as well in that rotation. The tight end room, you have Thomas Fidone coming back, the unquestioned number 1, but you also have a solid number 2 in Nate Borkacher, and when he comes in, Carter Nelson might be one of the most athletic tight ends since not really since, but compares to a guy like Travis Kelce. He's so dynamic, playing on the 8-man football team in Ainsworth. And now we move to the running back room. The running back room doesn't have a number 1 stud, but it has 4 guys that can really change the game up in their play styles. You have Gabe Ervin, who's a bell cow running back, down to the earth type of guy who will get out those tough yards. Same with a guy like Dante Dowdle. Dante Dowdle, the transfer in from Oregon, he provides more of a burst of speed. Ramir Johnson and Emmett Johnson, a little bit of the same Emmett Johnson, more like Gabe Ervin, Ramir Johnson, the third down back. So I think that skill positions will be a strength for this team. And coaching, I think Nebraska has one of the best developmental coaching staffs in the nation with what they did last year. And Matt Rule, always known as a developer, always known for big year 2 and year 3 strides. Now we go into the weaknesses. I think the offensive line is going to be a weakness. They need the offensive line to play at least okay. They do have a stud at center in Ben Scott. They do have a stud at tackle in Bryce Benhart. But really, that's all they have. Bryce Benhart and Ben Scott at center. At the guard spots, it's going to be Justin Evans-Jenkins taking the primary guard spot, and the jury is still out on him. He's a bit undersized. I just think that the offensive line as a whole is going to be pretty weak, and if Matt Rule can get them to play okay, to be an average offensive line, this team will win a lot of games. And I think that may happen, but now, projecting it, I think it's a weakness that they need to solve. Quarterback, this isn't necessarily a weakness, it's just an unknown. I didn't really have a third category, so unknown goes more under weakness. We just don't know what Dylan Raiola is going to be. And it's just assuming that he wins the job. Now, I think he'll win the job like everyone else, but Heinrich Harburg is working hard to become the starter. And if he's the starter, I don't think Nebraska wins too many games this year because he's just not a good thrower of the football. He can run it. He's a great athlete. Get him on the field, but Dylan Raiola has to start, in my opinion. Now, if he does start, we just don't know how a teenager is going to stack up playing in front of 70,000 fans. Now, as we will discuss in the schedule breakdown coming up soon, he has a pretty easy road to get his feet wet. But anyway, now recent success, the last weakness, everyone is underrating Nebraska because, they haven't had a winning season since 2016. They haven't made a bowl game since the Stone Age. But, I mean, you got to look at the team now. You can't look at the Scott Frost teams a couple years ago and say, yep, that's what this is. You can't look at last year and say, oh, that's what this is going to be, because last year they were just decimated by injuries. I think most, if not every starter on offense was injured at some point in time and just missed games at some point in time. So this is what I have for strengths and weaknesses. Now we move to the second portion of this video where we break down the Nebraska schedule. If you want to pause the video really quickly and look at the schedule, do so. But we will move right in here. I have a grading scale. I don't believe in predicting just wins and losses this early. I'll be doing more of that the closer we get to the season in August. But now, as we go into the month of June, I just don't believe in predicting wins and losses outright for now. So I have a grading scale. Orange will be in the 0 to 30% range. This is the range where I say not likely that they win this game. Not likely to probably not. A pick'em game is a flip of the coin for me. You can give slight edges to one team or the other, but really it's going to be a battle. In purple, that will be in black, the pick'em, and the purple will be in 60 to 80% range, and the certified win, the all but closed it out win, will be in the Big Ten blue. And you'll see as we go through, we'll go one at a time. So let's get right into it. All in all, this is a very manageable schedule, but in the orange region, the 0 to 30% range, I would have to put going to Ohio State and to USC. USC being, I think, an offense that will greatly trouble the Nebraska defense, even maybe more so than Ohio State, in my opinion, because of their aerial attack, and they can exploit some of Nebraska's few weaknesses on defense in that way. And at Ohio State will be closer to 0, in my opinion. This is really the only certified loss on this schedule for Nebraska. USC, I can see Nebraska pulling up an upset, but it's going to be later in the year. It's going to be homecoming for USC and Ohio State, really. But for USC, I see this more as a 70-30 USC tilt in my opinion. So I would put it closer to 30 than 0. But this is who I have in the orange region. The next region, the Big Ten blue region, the light blue, is the certified win versus UTEP and versus Northern Iowa. And UTEP, from what I've heard, has no secondary. They have a first-year head coach, and this will be a very easy game for Nebraska to integrate Dylan Raiola in. This will be a night game at home, week 1, friendly environment. I think this is just the perfect game for Dylan Raiola to get his feet wet before the week 2 showdown with Colorado. North Iowa, don't know too much about them. I'm not sure that a lot of people do know a whole lot about them, but I have these games as certified wins, as should every sane person. And now we'll go to the purple region here. So this is where I would give Nebraska a significant tilt, but it could still go either way, kind of like at USC when we mentioned there. So we go versus Colorado. I think Nebraska's roster as a whole is much better than Colorado's roster as a whole. Colorado's roster has multiple holes, a whole new offensive line, no pun intended. And this being a night game at Nebraska, a revenge game for Nebraska from last year, where Colorado fans treated Nebraska fans awfully, and really a game in which Nebraska could have won if not for one person, and that would have been Jeff Sims. And this is a game where I give Nebraska a 70-30 lean, in my opinion. Just a rough estimate here. Week 4 versus Illinois. Illinois, I don't see them being a very good Big Ten team. I'm sorry to all the Illinois fan out there, but it's just not there right now. There's no gusto to this program. There's no juice. Nothing seems alive there, and I don't think Brett Bielema is going to survive past this year. At Purdue, I project them to be one of the worst Big Ten teams out there. They do have strong trench play, but how will that factor in when Nebraska's strongest unit, in my opinion, is the defensive line? I think that Nebraska will handle Purdue very easily, even though it will be at Purdue. Week 8 at Indiana, an Indiana team that has a first-year head coach, a ton of transfers, I think closer to 60 transfers, a lot of them coming from JMU, where Curt Cignetti came from. And I just think that this is just going to be same old Indiana this year. Curt Cignetti will build up that roster, and they will be a contending Indiana team in 3 to 4 years. Versus UCLA, a ton of turnover. Didn't really like the head coaching hire, and they have a long way to go. So all these games, Nebraska should and probably will win. I could see them dropping 1 out of these 5, but really no more than that. Our last section here in black, the 3 pick'em games I have versus Rutgers, versus Wisconsin, and at Iowa. If they can pull out 2 of these 3, it would be huge, but I only expect them to pull out 1 of these 3. Versus Rutgers is going to be a very formidable Big Ten opponent. The only question mark I have on that roster is at quarterback. First, Wisconsin is top heavy with a lot of really, really good players. I look at players like Tackett Curtis that they got out of the transfer portal. And then Iowa, Nebraska's rival. If you've been listening to my channel for long enough, you know my thoughts on Iowa. I think they're vastly overrated. But this is always a tight game. There are always mistakes that lead to the other opponent winning in this game. And it should be a fun one. But I have these as pick'em games. Now, this comes to a projected record of 9-3. If you look at the first 7 games, versus UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa, Illinois, at Purdue, versus Rutgers, at Indiana, with that bye in week 7, I can conservatively say that they will go 6-1 in that stretch with a loss to either Colorado or Rutgers. And even then, I would still give Nebraska the slight lean in Rutgers' case and major lean in Colorado's case. But I could see one of those teams upsetting Nebraska. And then that puts them at 6-1 going into the Ohio State week. They will lose to Ohio State. They will beat UCLA. They will have a bye. And that puts them at 7 wins with 3 games left to go and a bye. And all they have to do is pick up 2 wins at USC versus Wisconsin and at Iowa. I would predict them to lose to USC and to pick up those last 2 wins versus Wisconsin and at Iowa. But it could be that they pick up the win at USC and at Iowa, or at USC and versus Wisconsin. But that's my projected record. I think more conservatively, you could say 8-4, but I project 9-3 here. So thank you so much for watching. Go Big Red. If you have not hit the like button already, like the video, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and we will have more videos like this coming out with more teams. I have Ohio State on the way, Michigan on the way, and Oregon on the way, as well as PSU. All right, see you later, guys.